Welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dream punk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before.
Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 92 of Brainstorium. Apologies for my rather nasal voice. I'm enjoying, in quotation marks, the first virus of the season, and I really have to record today. But it does mean my voice can go deeper and more gravelly. So maybe it's all worked out for the best, since this is the Halloween special. And yes, maybe it is weird and a bit risky for me to declare this as the Halloween show when, as usual, I have no idea what words are going to come out of the socks of destiny. No clue as to what writing prompts I will be faced with today. So how can I know that I'll be able to draft and share with you at the end a short story or scene based off one of them that will be suitably spooky? I suppose, as a discovery writer and having challenged myself in these ways enough times, I've kind of developed a sort of trust or faith, blind faith, that either serendipity will intervene with some creepy words or that my imagination will find a way to render something spooky out of them. Thinking about this, I did have a quick look back at last year's Halloween special, and it's weird how the themes just sort of emerged ready-made. The Socks of Destiny complied that day. There was a portent about a hexed bride, and there was even a crystalline zombie. What are the chances? But whatever does or doesn't come out of the socks today, I do have some incredible stories and poetry to read out, my talented listeners' responses to two very creepy prompts from the last show, the undead date and the weary porcelain doll. So at least that part of today's show will be guaranteed Halloween themed. The rest is up to the forces that be, and maybe my creepy voice. I also have a special Halloween offer for you. During the spooky season, that is, between now and the 8th of November, I may have just picked a random date there, but never mind, the ebook of Eye for Immortality will be 99 cents or 99p, or equivalent low price in other territories. So if you haven't read it yet, now would be a good time to head over to wherever you buy ebooks and get your copy. Your Halloween will be all the spookier for it. Eye for Immortality is the second release from my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, but of course each book is standalone and they can be read in any order. They are simply connected by the source of their inspiration, which is of course the crazy game I play on this show. It doesn't really resemble any stories out there that market themselves as Halloween themed, at least not to my knowledge, but it is eerie with some very dark and bizarre, profound ideas at its core. Link in the show notes, or you can just search for Anna Tizard wherever you buy ebooks. Before we get started, and my listeners' stories and poetry will be right up next, I have even more reasons to be excited this Halloween. And I've been sitting on this for a while. Gosh, my voice really is it's just ridiculously deep. During the last weekend of October that crosses into November, it's FantasyCon in the UK. And I'm going. I've never been to a convention of any kind before. And I kind of have to go because this year it's in my hometown of Brighton on the southeast English coast. And the venue is a mere bus ride away. I could not possibly find a reason not to go. And why would I? I know that in America, FantasyCon is a big thing with a lot of dressing up. I have no idea how much we Brits tend to dress up at these things. Probably a lot less. It's on a much smaller scale, and we are a shyer culture on the whole as well. I'm looking forward to a lot of talks and events, learning lots, meeting lots of other authors, and making connections. I will be doing something a bit silly. Of course I will, this is me. I'm going to be offering a sort of lucky dip of writing prompts. In fact, I'm going to fashion a sort of mini shoulder bag from a large sock, like a bed sock. A clean one, of course. I'm actually still waiting for these to arrive in the post at the time of recording. The socks of destiny themselves are a bit too small for this particular job. I've been through my records of hundreds of exquisite corpses that have come up on Brainstorium over the last few years and gathered about 60 or 70 word combinations, and I plan to print these off on small squares of paper, roll them up like tiny scrolls, maybe even tie them with a little bit of cord, and put them in this little bag, sock bag, so I can entice other authors at the event to have a rummage, pull one out, and at least have a think about what they might do with that prompt. Maybe they'll keep it, they'll put it in their pocket and come across it after the event and think, I might write something based on that. I might even have a listen to Brainstorium and see what that's all about. The women seem kind of crazy, but I'm sure it's fine. But aside from that, my lucky dip sock plan, I'm not running any events or talks. This is my first convention, and I really want to go there as part of the audience to hoover up whatever useful information I can and meet lots of lovely and interesting people who love what I love. The themes of FantasyCon this year are horror, which I don't really write but often lean towards, and lyrical styles of writing, which I hope, is very much up my alley. My original influences, my roots as an author, if I delve back far enough, are in literary fiction, even though I don't really read it so much anymore. And I like to think that nowadays it's becoming much more commonplace for genre fiction to blend with the literary. All writing has the opportunity to be beautiful to read, to be lyrical in style, but without holding back the pace of a good plot. It's all about balance. So really looking forward to all of that, and no doubt I'll have some tips and crazy anecdotes to share with you in the next show, although I will have to be rather ninja about recording because the weekend I would normally use to record in is taken up by the convention. I shall just have to find a way to squeeze it in. I might have to leave most of my feedback on the convention to the next show after that, because then I would have had more time to stare into space and have a think about it. Anyway, that's all to come in the next couple of shows. I think now it is time to get stuck into some Halloween tales. Let the velvet curtains of spookiness be drawn aside. Now, as I mentioned, the writing prompts I invited you to respond to were the undead date, whatever that may mean, and the weary porcelain doll. As usual, I was not disappointed. Elena Dennison wrote a poem based on the undead date entitled, "He Ghosted Me, the Fool." He ghosted me, but I will wait behind a half-open door at the top of the stairs to breathe out his name, or in the shower, shrouded in steam, where I will draw a watery love heart on his reflection. He ghosted me, but I am the undead date, and I know where he lives. Ah, so creepy. I love this. It has all the suspense you'd expect from a story. The way it unfolds is kind of like the perfect opening to a horror movie. Thank you, Elena Dennison. Nick Vrekar wrote about the weary porcelain doll. Buddy was tired of waiting. He had spent only a moment as David's best friend, a longer moment as a curiosity, a haunted doll in a corner museum. He had seen the world end from his glass case ages ago. It had been so long since someone visited. All Buddy wanted was a friend. It's that simple language at the end that has so much tension gathered underneath it, like a half-glimpsed shape pushing up from under a sheet. Thank you for haunting us, Nick. Alessandro Bozzo combined the undead date and the weary porcelain doll in one story. Over there, Hazan pointed shakily with his tiny ceramic finger. The poor doll sounded exhausted. He was just tired of having his spirit trapped in this claustrophobic children's toy. Ever since the priestess had discovered his connection to the supernatural world, she had been forcing him to work with her, solving countless occult mysteries, with the promise that she would eventually release him. Only the priestess knew how to perform the ritual to set his soul free. Hazan's connection to the spirit world allowed him to see things that the living could not. So, here they were, a weary porcelain doll and his master trying to discover the source of an undead plague in a small village. It's a date palm? The priestess observed with curiosity. Using his spectral vision, Hazan proceeded to explain that the unconsecrated burial ground that lay beneath the soil here was the source of the corruption. A single date palm grew here. Anyone who ate of the fruit from that tree succumbed to its poison and then returned from the grave as something unholy. The villagers had taken to calling this tainted fruit undead dates. Now quickly do your thing and heal this land, then release me from this accursed earthenware vessel once you're done. Hazan grumbled impatiently, and don't eat any of those dates. There is so much packed in here. It's just a scene, but you found a way to sneak in a glimpse of this ongoing awkward partnership between a spirit trapped in a doll and a priestess. Thank you, Alessandro. Paul Monteith also combined the two writing prompts into one and wrote The Undead Date and the Porcelain Doll. Drac was finally sitting beside his date instead of facing her, allowing him to avoid her fixed, vacant, glassy-eyed gaze. Her look penetrated his soullessness, evoking thoughts of a stake penetrating his heart, and he shuddered. To Anna, Drac looked like most of her other dates, dead on arrival. It was as if death had failed to claim him. He looked older than his profile pic, and a sickly sweet odour followed him. His smell and age made Anna wary of him. Even so, she felt compelled to expose her neck and offer him her flawless porcelain skin. Drac parted his ruby-red lips and, with fangs bared, came down on Anna's neck. He shrieked. Instead of piercing skin, his fang chipped on her hard ceramic casing. She looked at him dead-eyed. Quite the porcelain doll, aren't I? Well, this one took me by surprise. A vampire and a doll go on a date, and what happens? I get the feeling she might have one up on him. And not just because she's called Anna. Thank you, Paul Monteith. Finally, Eric Montgomery, who writes poems and short stories, responded to both writing prompts, but separately. The first is The Weary Porcelain Doll. The basement smelled of damp plaster and old perfume. Clara's flashlight slid across rows of faces, pale and waiting. She told herself they were only dolls, but her breath still quickened. Porcelain caught the light in a way that skin shouldn't, a wet gleam on eyes that never closed. She crouched to check the lowest shelf. One doll sat apart, dress grey with dust, a faint crack down its cheek like an old wound. Its head tilted toward her, though she couldn't remember bumping the shelf. Her grandmother's voice came back, faint and trembling from years ago. Be gentle with the weary porcelain doll. It's seen more than you think. Clara tried to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. She reached for the doll. Its painted eyes reflected her flashlight, but for a moment she swore she saw movement behind the reflection. Something shifting inside the hollow head, slow and deliberate. The light flickered. All around her, the shelves creaked as if the dolls were leaning forward to listen. That's just so creepy. I love it. I'm just going to have to dive straight into the next one. They're just so good. This is The Undead Date, again by Eric Montgomery. The match hissed to life as Darius whispered the final Latin phrase from charmsforyou.net. The site promised confidence and energetic realignment for the romantically cursed. It sounded cheaper than therapy and faster than the gym. He lit the candle, set the match aside, and watched the flame tremble, smoke curling through the air like doubt. Then came the knock, slow, wet, from the window. He turned, heart hammering in rhythm with the sound. A pale shape leaned against the glass, hair heavy with soil, one hand pressed flat enough to squeal against it. At first, he thought it was a trick of the candlelight, a reflection, until it moved again, and he saw the eyes. Familiar eyes. That's when the mouth opened. The voice came through the pane, low and cracked. You didn't even wash the sheets, did you? Darius couldn't move. The ring on her finger caught the candlelight, shining like something remembered too late. Across town, the woman he'd met on a dating app waited in a candlelit booth, texting, "Everything okay?" He stared at the cracked smile on the thing that had been his ex-wife. "Yeah," he whispered, his voice barely there. "Just an undead date." These are just magnificent. The balance between things happening, change, movement, and the pure lyricism, the beauty, it's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing these, Eric. Right, it is time to discover unique new story possibilities with some Halloween flavour, hopefully, as we reach into the Socks of Destiny. Oh, and by the way, I recorded, before we have the scary organ music, I record the writing prompts like a week in advance of this. So my voice is much more normal in this following step. Yes, without further ado, let the Socks of Destiny bring forth the new ideas. That's right. So Exquisite Corpse mixes your words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. I'll play 3 rounds to create 3 very weird sentences, brainstorm some ideas along the way, then I'll pick one to draft a story or scene from. After that, it'll be over to you to respond to a word combination that tickles your neurons, and I'll make some suggestions at the end of the show. So it is with some trepidation that I reach into the describing word sock. Our first word is from Tim Hardy from the Spotlight Indie podcast. Glittering. So who or what was glittering?
Let's see, our next word, our noun, is from Mostly Paul, also known as Quantum Fairy on Blue Sky. Mafioso. Actually, I did look this up because sometimes it's worth looking up words that, well, you already know the meanings for, to see if there's more around the topic that might enhance your understanding of that word. So apparently in Sicilian, mafioso actually translates to swagger, boldness and bravado. So someone who's fearless and proud and enterprising. These all quite interesting meanings that feed into our modern understanding of a member of the mafia. So a glittering mafioso makes me think, well, they're wearing a lot of jewellery, are they not? This one is anyway. So our action is from Paul Thomas, concealed. What or who did they conceal? Or did they conceal an act? Our next word is from Paul Benfield. Brightly feathered. Brightly feathered. Could this be a very strange costume or an actual bird? Our final word for this particular exquisite corpse is from Harold. Retired social worker. Oh my goodness, because this is about the mafia, it makes you think they've killed this person. Okay. Oh God, this is actually quite horrifying. It might be too horrific for me, actually. Anyway, I'll read the whole thing because the glittering mafioso concealed the brightly feathered retired social worker. Oh gosh, this sounds like a hit. It sounds like a mafioso glittering with stolen black market jewels, money, has hidden the body of, has to be the dead body of, a brightly feathered retired social worker. So maybe this is something that happened at a costume do. So are we talking about a weird a Halloween costume party, and this retired social worker has turned up wearing bright feathers? Are they some kind of parrot? Well, there's got to be a grudge. There's a grudge. There's history here. Maybe the social worker is someone that this mafia member knew when they were a child. Things did not go well. There was a report about their father or their mother abusing them, and the social worker got involved, but something went wrong. It's never going to be an easy situation to handle, but having grown up and turned bad, turned evil, this mafia member has decided to finally take it out on the social worker who, in their eyes, did not handle things the way they should have done. And perhaps their lives would have been very different in their minds if this social worker had behaved differently, somehow, perhaps more caringly, or took things to the next level, or not, or simply left things alone. Gosh, this one actually works. Like, immediately. This is very unusual. I'm going to leave this one there for now, since it works, and move on to number 2. Our first word for our second exquisite corpse is from Harold. Hyperactive. Next word is from Paul Macmillan, known as Bookmarks L&L on X. Wandering Gypsy. It's a hyperactive wandering gypsy Initially, it makes me feel like this gypsy is wandering at high speeds, cannot stop wandering, more than usual. Let's grab an action. Our action this time is from Paul Thomas. Was in a parallel universe to. Makes me think there's an awful lot more wandering than we think, going across worlds now. Next word, a describing word, is from, if I can disentangle it from my finger, Mariah. Mustachioed. I always think that sounds like pistachio. Mustachioed? I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but there we go. So someone with a big old moustache. Final word is from Wendy. Collector. Ooh, a mustachioed collector. Oh, I really like that word combination, partly because I don't know what it means. It could be various things. We don't know what this person is collecting. Hopefully they're not collecting moustaches. I guess they might be, if we're going to get spooky with this. That would be very creepy. Okay, I'm just going to read the entire Exquisite Corpse, then I think it might be time for some green tea. So the second Exquisite Corpse is the hyperactive wandering gypsy was in a parallel universe to the mustachioed collector. Oh, there's a lot going on in here. Okay, let's give this a stir. Right. Okay, so the hyperactive wandering gypsy was in a parallel universe to the mustachioed collector. I mean, to begin with, I was thinking more about how a wandering gypsy, if we're led to believe they're hyperactive, has wandered too far and ended up in a parallel universe. And as a lover of portals, this is appealing to me, naturally. I already have this caravan in my mind's eye, floating through space, or just magically appearing in a wood, which the gypsy discovers as he steps outside one morning, contains weird creatures he doesn't recognise. During that storm last night, what actually happened? Has he gone too far? Wandered too far? But then, looking at the entire Exquisite Corpse, we're told that the gypsy is in a parallel universe to a collector with a moustache, or many moustaches, if that is what he collects. I mean, taken on its own, and thinking along Halloween lines, a mustachioed collector could be someone who murders people for their moustaches and removes them in a disgusting kind of way that I really don't want to describe and keeps them in a box, which is completely gross. Too gross for me. I need something less obvious and less gross. I feel like I'd prefer it if the two characters actually met. Maybe they belong in parallel universes, but their worlds collide, they bump into each other, and I want to know what happens then. I do not know. I think I'll set that aside while I reach for our third and final Exquisite Corpse and see what other options are available to us. So first word is from Alessandro Bozzo. Bloated. Okay, bloated. Why in particular? Too much cheesecake? I've been there. Next word is from Paul Thomas, if I can possibly open it up. Autocrat. Oh, a bloated autocrat. Interesting. I feel there might well be too much cheesecake here now. Action is from Paul Benfield. Crossed the dry waste to meet. Ooh, so we have a journey across an arid wasteland. Whilst being bloated, could this in fact be bloating from water retention, which you can get in arid places? I do not know. Next word is from Paul Thomas again. Entranced. Okay. Final word. Better be a good one. This is from Alex of the Spotlight Indie podcast. Allosaurus. I don't actually know what that is. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm sure it is a kind of dinosaur. An entranced Allosaurus. Okay. So the entire exquisite corpse is the bloated autocrat. Crossed the dry waste to meet the entranced Allosaurus. It feels like a scene out of Jurassic Park. I love that series of movies. I rewatch them to death. For some reason, I often find myself watching them at Christmas. It's become a Christmas tradition. Anyway, so yes, because there's always... So an autocrat can be either someone who who leads with absolute power, has actual power, or it can just be a person who expects everyone to obey them. And of course, Jurassic Park, something like that, it's always full of these characters who have completely the wrong idea about life, and they're full of arrogance. I mean, that's really what the series is about, isn't it? Is the arrogance of human beings to think that they can control nature, these giant forces that are wild and definitely not under our control. So it's funny that this bloated autocrat, bloated seems to add to that, as if their bloated egos are met with an entranced Allosaurus. So maybe there's a way in which this autocrat is kind of almost hypnotizing this massive, powerful creature. So there is a moment, and of course there's always a moment in the movies where the character is led to believe or finds themselves able to believe that they can control them. And this is that moment. They've entranced the Allosaurus. Doesn't feel very Halloween, but I guess you could make it Halloweeny with what happens next, in the way in which they find they do not control this massive primeval creature that is so much more powerful than them. Okay, so some interesting, rather different exquisite corpses. Well, they're always different. That's why I play the game, is for these unique and completely unpredictable word combinations. I will, of course, use the pause button now for a while to draft either a scene or a short story based on one of these. Wish me luck.
The face was back again. She'd seen it in the shapes of steam unfurling from her coffee. She'd glimpsed it in a cloud only yesterday, but that might have just been her imagination. But as she set down the wash bucket, it was there, wavering in the surface, watching her. Zalia washed her clothes as quickly as she could, keeping the water churning continuously. Never let it settle. For there was no knowing how the secret eyes found you, how he made you disappear, where you went, and a fireside story that was fun to tell the night before over sausages roasting on sticks was, in the morning, as cold and real as the ground frost that ached through her knees. The face wobbled on the water, as if he was standing behind her, leaning over the bucket. The soap suds parted and spread into thin lines of bubbles fizzling out. The man's smile spread wide, his thick moustache a shadow along his upper lip. Anger laced with terror balled in Zalia's chest. Her fist tightened, and with a shout she smashed the surface of the water. Still there. She rocked back onto her heels and sank down onto the freezing grass, breaths coming quick. How could she be so stupid as to think she could beat the man? Then to anger him, draw his attention to her. But hadn't he already taken everything from her? She had so little left to lose. Her parents, her sister, were just a fading dream. Sometimes she idly wondered if she'd made them up, if it had all been a dream. But no, she had to come from somewhere, even if, as a wanderer gypsy, that place was unmapped, more a place of the heart. But if only she knew why the man hunted them. He'd taken her family, if the stories were true. There was no other story that made any sense. She poured out the water, squeezing the sopping clothes against the inside, and trudged back to her caravan. Her shy horse, Mitchell, was already stomping for his breakfast. Hungry again, Mitchell? Surely not. She cooed with gentle sarcasm, stroking his glossy side. But as she reached for his food bag, something made her hesitate. It was first light, quiet, too quiet. Turning from Mitchell, she trod softly over the grass, suspicion tingling in her skin. Her neighbour, her friend Ingus, who often travelled with her, was parked behind that little copse of trees. The doors to his wagon were open, but he wasn't there. His horse wasn't there, and one of the doors was hanging off its hinges. Zalia stalked around the side of it, careful to stay out of view of the open wagon, just in case. But the silence was an eerie blanket smothering the whole area, and not even the birds in the trees wanted to mark the sunrise. A whimper, too small to be Ingus's voice. It had to be his daughter, Sarah. At the thought of that tangle-haired, pure-hearted imp of a girl, Zalia dropped all her caution and rushed to the doorway. "Sarah?" With a thump and a clatter, Sarah dashed out, the whites of her eyes seeming to glow in the dusk. "Zalia, where's Daddy? Where's Daddy?" "What happened, Chickpea?" Zalia stroked back the girl's wild curls. But whatever it was too awful to say. Sarah mashed her face into Zalia's stomach, gulping back the words that caught on a sob. Zalia's rage was liquid now, like lava rushing through her veins. She stormed into the wagon, lit a lamp with shaking hands, and pored over every surface, hunting. There had to be some clue. Her heart beat against the obvious, but no, she couldn't accept it, not yet. There had to be a clue. She only found silence, as if Ingus had left a glut of it behind. Dust motes danced like midges in all the spaces where he could have been, should have been. The kitchenette, the sofa bed still pulled out, the quilt a jumble of panic left behind. The crouch space underneath, a secret compartment where Sarah had surely hidden, trembling like a mouse, while... Zalia huffed, shook her head. "Not until I know." "Ingus?" As if he would answer, as if she could call the signs to her, make them appear. There, the mark against the wall, adjacent to the bed. Zalia held up the lamp. A swirl of striations, faint but still visible, as if a dirty piece of corduroy fabric had pressed against the wall, but in a looping curve, just like all the times before. It was him, the giant fingers of the man. With wild eyes, Zalia envisioned the moment, unable to escape it now, as if the scene were unfolding in front of her. Ingus's shout as the doors tore open. Hasty whispers to Sarah, urging her to hide and stay quiet under the bed. Ingus grabbing his cricket bat, swinging it hard against the massive protrusion of flesh as it reached inside. Again and again he would have pummeled it, this giant muscular worm. The other adjoined worms that spread from the monstrous hand, fumbling for him, grazing the wall as they searched, leaving that partial fingerprint. Then finally grasped, curled around his body. It was too strong. Ingus would have struggled uselessly, but the hand might have knocked him against the wall, rendering him unconscious. Otherwise, Zalia would surely have heard his shout. She lowered the lamp, swallowing. The man always got you in the end. That's how the stories went. There was a reason why the wanderer gypsies never settled. They were forever on the run. Spooky? Spooky enough? Not traditionally Halloweeny, but that's not me. Every story must be a surprise. To me first, and then I know I have a good chance of passing on that surprise to you, because being genuinely surprised is one of my favourite things about reading. I have more ideas surrounding this story and where it could go, if Zalia gets to confront this surreptitious giant who likes to collect humans, these so-called wanderer gypsies especially. But there wasn't enough space and time to fully develop it for this show. And I'm glad I left plenty of space and time to share your stories. Thanks again to everyone who sent them in to make this Halloween special really special. They were just wonderful to read out and so inspiring. Some of them are beginning to get a little longer than the 1 to 2 paragraphs I've been asking for, but I've been thinking about this and I'd like to give you that little bit more space for these entries wherever that's needed, as it's so difficult to squeeze a lot into 100 or 150 words. Maybe 250 words with some wiggle room should be the new limit. Let me know what you think. I still welcome the short pieces. It's just that I don't want you to feel too cramped when you've got something sprouting deliciously at your fingertips. Now, what new writing prompts shall I suggest from today's Exquisite Corpses? If you want to have a go at a complete exquisite corpse, just go for it. The one I've just used might be a good one to try. I'd love to hear what you think of it. The hyperactive wandering gypsy was in a parallel universe to the mustachioed collector. But if that's too bonkers, it may well be too bonkers, or too much to try and squish into microfiction or poetry, then how about trying either one of those describing word-noun combinations, being either the hyperactive wandering gypsy, or the mustachioed collector. Ooh, I didn't really get to explore the mustachioed collector in much detail because he was just kind of a glimpsed face in a bucket of water. So let me know what you might make of him. If you focus just on the one-word combination, one character, maybe that image will more easily blossom and morph into something unique and brand new. You'll never know until you put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. If you have something you'd like to share, you know what to do. Go to annatizard.com and hit the contact button on any page footer, or ping me on social media if you found me there. I'm not on there a lot, but just enough. Make sure you get your entry to me by the Friday after this show goes out, so I have time to include it in my recording for the following weekend's release. And don't forget the special Halloween offer of Eye for Immortality. It did win an award, you know. And forgive me, I can't help but quote a review from Harland Dirksen, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who says, "Eye for Immortality is a story of change and permanence, and reading it permanently changed me." Anna Tizard writes with pace and passion and does so beautifully. The book just flows. Eye for Immortality is a gem and a tour de force. Wow, thank you to Holland if you might be listening. Every time I read this review, I feel like I must have dreamt it. It just seems too good to be true. Anyway, I hope you may have a chance to read Eye for Immortality for a transformative Halloween. And why not? You can be creepy, deeply. That's why I call it Deeply Weird. Until next time, go forth and be inspired.
I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstorium. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.